Welcome to Grounded with John Tester and Maritza Giorgio. Today is the day we finally have Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who was also the Democratic nominee for vice president, on the ticket with Kamala Harris. And I cannot wait to drive you crazy, Senator Tester, with all kinds of stuff about Minnesota. It's just going to be a Minnesota love fest. It's
Oh,
just going to be torture.
you can tell the viewers right now this is going to be really a disgusting episode. We haven't interviewed Tim yet, so I mean, here's the deal. She used her Minnesota charm to woo the governor of Minnesota to this podcast, so it's all on her doing. So if he isn't very good, you have to blame her.
That's fine. I'll take the blame. I am a really big fan of accountability. I'm all about that. Yeah, I'll take the
Okay,
blame. And did you know he has a Montana connection?
I sure did. His daughter went to MSU and may still be going to MSU. I don't know. She could have graduated though.
I think she's graduated. But I think she might.
I could have wore my M-Son hat because Montana State University Northern is a satellite of MSU Bozeman, and then we could have talked about M-Son again, but I didn't. Um,
Oh, Emson, that's going to haunt me forever. I brought a hat in case you didn't wear an appropriate one, so I'll show you. I'll show you later in the episode. All right, should we get to some headlines? You have a busy day of what did you pack a semi full of wheat this morning or something?
we're gonna haul down some some grain, the stuff we didn't seed. We're gonna unload, so it's good. Yeah,
Okay. All right. I can't wait. I think we might even try to put something about that on our Substack later if we can figure
if
it
I
out.
can remember, if I can remember.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you can remember. Let's get to some headlines. We have a lot. It came down. I mean, they're still coming down right now as we're speaking. Just in this morning, Thursday morning, a judge temporarily stopped President Trump from his effort to block Harvard from accepting international students. So this is temporary still. I think we're going to see this play out in the courts, but the courts seem to be pushing back.
well, they are because, as I've said so many times, Congress is AWOL. Congress is not doing their job. And so when they look at the decisions that the executive branch is making, the courts are saying this isn't this isn't a decision that the executive branch needs to make. This is a decision that Congress needs to make, whether it's on tariffs or it's on any of this stuff. It's executive overreach, and it could easily stop, take it to Congress, and fix it through Congress. And if you don't have any faith in Congress, well, join the club. I don't think there's a lot of us that do. But it doesn't mean that the executive branch can just take the power and run with it and do it. We do not have a dictatorship in this country. We've got three co-equal branches of government. Read the Constitution. Quit looking for loopholes. When I hear senators get on TV and say, well, the tariff stuff is absolutely within the law, that's bullshit. It's not within the law. And they know it's not within the law. This isn't the tax code. This is the Constitution of the United States. Quit looking for loopholes. So it's not surprising that the court threw out the tariff stuff because it's not the White House's responsibility. It's Congress's responsibility. So Congress needs to get off their ass. And if they want the tariffs, vote for them. If they don't vote for them. It's crazy. It drives me insane. And by the way, this decision by the courts may be looked at as really good, but it still adds no certainty for business whatsoever because you know that the administration is going to appeal and this is going to go on, and the uncertainty is what kills business. This is what's amazing to me, Maritza. I was thinking about this last night as I was coming home. The Republican Party has always been the party of business. Uh, I think they got to give that moniker up too. They give up the party of family a long time ago, but now they need to give up the party of business because this is not good for business. And they need to step up. And by the way, Congress can do it. I've said it before. People have challenged me. There's a lot of good people in Congress that needs to step up the plate. And people say, well, if they were good people, they've already done it. Well, I still think they're good people. They know the right thing to do. They just got to quit being afraid and do it.
We have a fired up John Tester today. I like it.
Good. Yeah, I that's what
Didn't
happens when I
didn't
load of wheat in the morning.
Yeah, there you go. Didn't I mean, can we say you've heard from some of your former colleagues that they're kind of waiting for the courts to step in, right?
That's correct. Yeah, waiting for the courts to take care of it. So I guess so they don't have to be the bad guy. But that's not why you're elected. You're elected because it's a leadership position. Show some leadership. Do the right thing. follow the
So
Constitution.
Heather Cox Richardson, the historian who has a just huge fan following, she posted something here this week saying that a political scientist noted that the Trump administration suffered a 96% loss rate in federal courts just in the month of May. And we saw it again here overnight. The Court of International Trade ruled the Liberation Day tariffs imposed by the Trump administration on most countries on April 2nd that they are illegal. The three-judge panel ruled the president overstepped his authority in imposing those tariffs under an emergency act. Of course, the White House appealed overnight, but the panel said the Constitution allocates the power of the tariffs to guess which branch, Senator? Guess which branch?
Mike, let me think about this. Legislative.
Yeah, ding, ding, ding. So that's another loss for them. Of course, they're appealing. But did you also see this thing, this taco? Do you know what that is?
Trump always caves. I don't know what the O stands.
Trump always chickens out, and he was asked about it by a reporter, and he got pretty upset. But they're saying, hey, this is what happens. This is what's been happening, and then the markets rebound.
So here's the deal. I mean, this is the deal. If the president wants to do this stuff, whether it's with the students, and he's got a good reason to do it, and he, like I said, on some of the tariff stuff, it makes good sense, then take it to Congress. Have Congress vote on it and implement it the way it should be done. This is how a democracy works. It's messy, it takes time, but this is how people's voices are heard and how people are represented in our government. If you want a government that doesn't listen to people, that does whatever the hell they want, anytime they want to do it, go to Russia and just let Vladimir Putin run your life, or go to China and let Xi Jinping run your life, or go to North Korea and let Kim Jong-un run your life. But that's not how it's done here. And that shouldn't be done that way. We're the best country that's ever existed on earth because we are supposed to listen to the people who elected us. And it just not the president, it's the people in Congress too.
Elon Musk won't
Yeah.
likely be seen around the White House much anymore. He's
Want to
leaving
bet
his
on,
government.
you want to bet on that? Go
But you,
ahead.
you think he'll still be there, but not.
Without me to interrupt. I didn't. Keep going. That was rude
No,
of me.
that's okay. That's okay. I mean, he's got a lot of hats to wear. We know that. He says he's leaving his government job as advisor to President Trump. It came in a surprise post on social media. The timing here, though, is something because it came after he publicly slammed that big, beautiful bill, saying it increases the federal deficit and undermines all of the work that Doge did, which of course was cutting. And he said, I think a bill can be big or it could be beautiful, but I don't know if it could be both. So keep in mind, I mean, Doge had an initial target to cut spending by $2 trillion. And they said, okay, how about 1 trillion? And then, actually 150 billion.
Yeah, look, and we lost a lot of really good people in the process because there wasn't any method behind it. It was just, sending out letters saying we don't need you anymore, or you don't fit our plans anymore, and the damage has already been done. And by the way, the thing that's interesting about this, Maritza, is he, whacked people out of the Forest Service and everywhere, and as he undid USAID and all that stuff. Elon Musk never turned any of the money back that he got. He never offered to turn back any of the $38 billion that he got. You know, $38 billion to employ a lot of people who provide services to folks in our National Park Service, for example, or making sure people are fed, or doing research with NIH. The list is long. And so, Elon's Elon. I think it's a mistake when you bring somebody from South Africa, which is not exactly known for being a state without corruption, with a country, I mean, without corruption, and let him do whatever the hell he wants without any accountability, without any confirmation by Congress once again. And so, look, we wish him the best, but I'll bet you we see him in the White House.
We wish him the best. Like that. That's what employers usually say when they send out that email like, "Hey, if you see this person, they're not allowed to be in the building. We wish them the best." You don't know that. You've never worked in like a big like office building, but I've been there.
No, I haven't actually. I've been very fortunate. I've got to be honest with you, though. I've gotten a lot of letters since the election saying we wish you the best.
That's like in the South when they say bless your heart. It's not a good thing.
Is that right? Damn,
Uh-oh. Yeah, you don't know that?
I didn't know that.
Someone says to you, "Oh, bless your heart." It's not a good message. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the US is going to start aggressively revoking visas for Chinese students studying here, including in critical fields. This is about 270,000 students here from China, and from what I'm reading this morning, there's a little bit of panic.
Well, so look, once again, blanket, we're going to get rid of all the Chinese students in the country. For some people out there they're listening, they might think, well, this is great. We don't want those guys here anyway. Uh, but there ought to be some metrics around it. There ought to be some reason for it. Just because they're from China doesn't mean they're inherently evil. But I do think there's ways to check out to make sure students aren't spying on us and gathering information. They shouldn't be gathering information, whether it's through a university system, through government, whatever it might be. So once again, it's not unlike the tariffs. We're just going to put blanket tariffs on everybody, our friends, our enemies, everybody, and then hope that they'll be on our side when we need them for something that we need them for. When in fact that's not how it works. So there are a lot of students from Asia that are here that are really, really, really good people. And the ones that are good, we should work to keep them here. And by the way, after they finish their study here, we ought to give them a path so they can be citizens here. But if they're bad actors, figure out how to get them away. It's the same thing he's done with the border stuff. We were going to get rid of crooks and criminals, and now pretty soon we got people from Kalispell and guys from New Jersey and also for no reason whatsoever. They're just booting them out, which is not. It's not what the greatest country in the world should be doing.
I always wonder too. I mean, Carol Williams, back when her husband Pat was in Congress, she had this program to kind of bridge divides between American women and women in Russia.
Yeah.
And that it was controversial. But it is something like if we have really, really, really intelligent, bright, I mean, insanely off the charts genius students from China studying here, wouldn't we rather have them like be sympathetic to America than than be kicked out and hating America?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Bolton said it the other day pretty accurately when he said that in Trump's mind, if you've got a good relationship with the leader, you've got a great relationship with the country. When in fact, I think it should be if you've got a good relationship with the people, you have a good relationship with the country. And so those partnership programs that are out there, and Montana's been involved in many of them through the Air Guard, National Guard, and others.
And the Mike
And then
and the Mike Mansfield Center, I have to say.
Mansfield Center, you got that plug in there. That's good. It's about developing relationships, and it's about understanding each other's challenges and their ways of life. And that's ends up usually being a net positive for both sides.
Okay, drum roll. It's the time is here, and we would love to welcome Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to the Grounded podcast. It's great to see you, Governor. I was thinking this morning, I talked to you and met you in person for the first time last year at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I went up and
Yes.
talked to you, and I said, "Hey, I'm from Minnesota," and I'm thinking about how much your life has changed since then. I mean, that
Yeah.
was before President Biden said, I'm not gonna keep running. It was before the whole campaign. It was before the election. So, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you for asking. You were like the only person who talked to me at that. No one knew who I was, John. I'd never been to that thing. And it's quite a spectacle. It's kind of like nerd prom or something in DC. And I got, you get dressed up and you go to this thing and it was really nice. And you were talking about your family and yourself, your ties to Minnesota. But yeah, life comes at you fast. I had no idea where we were going to end up a couple months later.
Boy, ain't that the truth? Well, I mean, look, it is really good to have you on this podcast, Tim. I've got to tell you that being a U.S. senator, when I was in the Senate, I talked to a few people in the House, but not very often. But Tim Walz was a guy that served on the House Veterans Affairs Committee, and we would have joint hearings every once in a while. And this dude from Minnesota was sitting there, and I'd walk in and sit down beside him, and we get to talking. And truthfully, everybody says, this Minnesota nice BS, but you really are a nice guy.
Well,
And
it's nice of you to say so. Good to see you, John. And I fondly remember that. We did good work together. You were ranking member over there, and that is the one committee. And I've always said this, that there are a handful of senators who even know the names of people in the House.
yeah,
John McCain was one of those, by the way, would say hi to me when he'd see me. But that work in there, pretty bipartisan, pretty good. Although I know I about got us in trouble telling stories, and I know your listeners know you've got some stories. We would start going off in those hearings. So,
yeah, it was good though. But you're right, we did some good work. And so when Kamala Harris uh, had all sorts of people she was going to tap, there were guys and gals and everybody I was hearing was going to get it, but I never heard Tim Walz's name once. And all of a sudden, I heard Tim Walz's name a lot. And I will just tell you from my perspective as a guy from rural America, a farmer in Montana, I thought it was a really, really solid pick. And I don't say that to blow smoke up your ass. I mean, I think it was a really solid pick.
Yeah.
And so when you were part of the ticket, I thought this is an asset that is going to help Kamala Harris win the presidency. Now, I'm just going to be honest with you. Um, I don't think she used you. Especially in the end, I don't think she used you. That is my opinion, and that's what I saw.
Yeah.
And I think that was a massive mistake myself. Am I wrong?
Well, look, it was I think you're right about why they picked John, first of all. And that means a lot coming from you, because I think those of us who served, and, I came from a very tough congressional district, beat an incumbent to get there. Donald Trump won that district when I got reelected in 2016 by 20 points. So I thought, speaking of that, I can kind of consider you, Colin Peterson, maybe Sherrod Brown, a few folks who could get to these folks. So I think, and I told people this, that look, I think I was picked, one, for that reason. But two, I think some of the things we did in Minnesota, and I think just talking kind of common sense things, I hunted, I've been around that, did a lot of the things that should put people at ease, and then be able to talk about our policies. So look, those campaigns are big. We had 90 days. Strategic decisions had to be made. I take personally, it's my responsibility, and we didn't get it done. My job was, I think, to help win Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Did get Minnesota, thank goodness. But I think it goes to a deeper issue. Look, I know my job, and I didn't get it done. But I think you know this too, John, that we as a party kind of have a brand that makes it difficult for us to win in those places. And you were kind of against that wind. Didn't matter that you come from folks. Didn't matter that you know this stuff better than anybody out there. Didn't matter that your opponent didn't know any of those things. Because people just right now don't believe that Democrats are with the working party. And so I think especially white men in the Midwest, even though I was one of them, I thought it was a flex that I came right out of the public school classroom, and that Wall Street Journal did a story and said Walz is the poorest person to ever run for vice president. And strictly middle class, truly middle class, don't own stock, didn't buy stock in Congress, pay my bills, those types of things. And we didn't get there. So I don't know if it was what you said, John, if they didn't use it enough, or if I was not messaging it right. I always say this as a teacher. If I give a test and half the class doesn't get it right, probably because I didn't teach it very well. And so for whatever reason, I wasn't able to connect with enough of those white middle class or working class folks. I don't know if more of me would have done that or if it was the wrong message. But I'll tell you what, we better figure it out.
Yeah.
If we don't figure it out, it's a problem.
I'm going to let Maritza go here in a second, but I'll just say what I saw. I did not see you on TV as much as I thought you should have been on TV. And by the way, it ain't preparation. You let Tim Walz talk. Just let him talk. In fact, the worst thing you can do to Tim Walz, in my opinion, is tell him what he should be saying.
I know. I'm terrible at that.
just say, here's the issue, go out and explain it, and Tim Walsh will talk about it in ways that normal people can understand it. And I personally didn't see enough of it from my seat. But I will tell you, I was in the middle of a campaign too. I didn't spend my time watching TV
Yeah,
because
but
it
we
drove
should
me
have been able to
crazy.
help. Usually a presidential campaign helps down ticket, even popular senators. That was not the case. And I don't think it's not a look, I own this and I've been saying that, but I think we as a party have to have that. I think your observation, John, is a broader one too, not just about me, but about all of us not getting into every media environment, not being on podcasts like this one,
Yep.
not, local media matters. My God. They're not watching Meet the Press. They're listening to you guys as
It
they're going somewhere listening.
it does, and Maritza will agree with me on this. This podcast will probably single-handedly elect you to any position you want to run for. It's
You
it's the
know,
kind of power. It's the kind of power we have.
well,
It's
it
just
matters. People consume differently, and I think, look, Donald Trump is too big that any one person can. He sucks up so much oxygen, and I think you've got to fill all the lanes. I think you got to flood the zone, and I think your observation is what others that we didn't see, and I would argue we didn't see. The vice president when she got in front of people, and I watched her talking to young people. She was magnetic with them. She was optimistic. She was hopeful. But in today's world, you got to have a lot of that or it gets lost in the noise. And if you think you're just going to do a 60 minutes interview and that's going to get across, boy, that's not it. And I hear those now saying, well, we need to find the Joe Rogan of the left or whatever. I'm not buying that. But I am saying is we better be in places where a reach of like somebody like Joe Rogan is getting out there. And it may be for us doing multiple, venues. But I hear you, John. I don't think our message got out there enough and they didn't believe us. And this shakes me to the core. You Montanans, this, you're the home of labor unions. Working class folks decided that a billionaire was a better bet than a county attorney and a school teacher, or a farmer from Montana for a grifter. I mean, those are things that how did it happen from when I was growing up? Even somebody who wasn't very politically savvy, if you ask them who are the Democrats, oh, they're the unions, they're the working people. Who are the Republicans? Well, they're the golf course guys and the banker. That was pretty clear, and I think it was probably true. I don't think that's true today. I don't think they know who we are.
Yeah, if you don't know about the labor ties to Montana, go Google Frank Little because
Yeah.
there's a lot to talk about there, and we only have so much time with the governor. But Governor, I want to ask, like, you there's so many threads I could pull on there, from rural versus urban, from reaching out to people who, meeting them where they are, who aren't watching news or Meet the Press. But also, I'm wondering, what did you hear? Have you had some thoughtful discussions with any of your detractors or people who didn't support you that have given you insight, like telling you what would have won them over?
Yeah, I don't know about winning them over, but I've heard several that I think are really instructive. One I've heard this numerous times, but it's some variation of this. Look, I don't really like Trump. He kind of bugs me. I don't even know if he's right, but I like it that he's fighting and breaking stuff up for me. And I think Trump's superpower is he's identifying the angst that people are feeling and at least makes it look like he's fighting for them. I would make the case that he's working absolutely against them in every form, but I don't believe, and they kind of weaponize this, that Democrats aren't fighters. They're weak, and they try and paint you that way. Doesn't matter. And I think we have to do a better job of showing them that we're really with them. And then I think the second thing, Marisa, that I think that I heard from is, look, we've elected Democrats and things didn't get any better. I heard this in Wheeling, West Virginia from union folks and saying, I don't know. I don't think Trump's probably any better, but I'm willing to take another risk because you guys haven't been able to deliver, which I think is an unfair rap, especially on Joe Biden in terms of labor unions and work that we did on the economy. But from a broader perspective, I don't think when we're in charge, we pass stuff fast enough. I don't think we move things enough. And look, I know part of that's a problem with the system, but Trump appears to be fighting for folks. He channels their angst. He is willing to break the status quo. And I think Democrats are seen as being just part of the system and not willing to get stuff done. That's at least what I'm hearing from these folks who are showing up at these town halls.
Okay, so
Yeah,
oh, go ahead, Senator.
I'm just going to add one thing to that. I can tell you that I was in the Senate, Joe Biden's entire term, and there was not a bill that was passed that didn't have a union component to it.
Yep.
So for a union worker to say, geez, Joe Biden did more for unions than anybody in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I believe. And so
I believe that too. And you know, the statistics show they voted for Kamala and myself in higher numbers, even than Joe, which was big, if you were in a union. The problem is union membership has been shrinking. So union adjacent folks who are working class folks, tradespeople working in these noble professions, building trades, if they're not in a union, they did not vote for us. And even though they're benefiting from those policies. And I don't know, John, how do you make that case? Because even in Montana, a large number of folks, somebody like yourself, working people, you understood agriculture better, you're a protector of federal lands and personal freedoms, you're running against an opponent who I would say has none of those things. Why isn't that resonating?
So, Tim, this is Maritza and my podcast.
No. You answer the question.
We don't expect our guests.
I'm out learning.
Let me tell you that there's a lot of reasons why I lost this last election, and most of them revolve around missed opportunities, quite frankly. But the biggest reason, and I think it impacts every race from school board to the president of the United States, is we have so goddamn much money. Excuse my French,
Yeah.
because I say worse words than that. Coming into these elections,
Yeah.
that it just makes these elections so polluted with bad information that people don't know what to believe. So they just kind of go down the ticket. And they started in Montana, they started with Trump and they went down the ticket.
Yeah.
And the collateral damage to that was me. But there were a lot of other reasons too. There were groups out there that traditionally supported me that thought that it was going to just be fine. Small hospitals were one of them. And now they're talking about Medicaid, which will ruin rural hospitals. But you know what? In Montana, at least, this is what they wanted.
Yeah.
I'm not bitter, Tim. I'm not bitter. I'm gonna let Maritza ask you a question.
I'm listening on this because look,
and then I want to ask you one.
All right.
I'm gonna take back to your days as a teacher.
Ooh.
Right.
Well, I mean, rural hospitals is a huge deal, and this is something that we've been talking about as we look at this. But let's kind of go down a path here because we solicited questions, and of course, I have so many family members and friends in Minnesota still who sent me questions to ask you. But like literally the majority of them are about the future of the Democratic Party, right?
Yep.
And I know you get this all the time. And I know when people say, who's the leader? And you say, it's not one person, it should be the people. It's the people. Yep. So let's like go through some scenarios here because Alyssa Slotkin came out with this kind of idea of a shadow cabinet to really combat what's happening right now in the Trump administration. And Politico had quite a bit of fun with this, and they decided they were going to name the shadow cabinet. And guess who was named as the shadow interior secretary? It was our friend Jon Tester from Big Sandy, Montana. So my question is, do you think that would be a good strategy to kind of build a coalition of people with all kinds of different beliefs and across different geographical locations in the country to really combat this and come together?
100%. I've been talking about this for years. I'm in 100% agreement. I've been saying this for years that we need to both being prepared for it. And look, I don't like to admit it, but the Brits and the Europeans do this better. The idea of the shadow government is that you don't allow them to put out the information, have it unresponded to. I think that's John's point in the campaign, that I think we didn't respond quickly enough on different issues, and we ceded the playing field to them, and then the narrative became that. I think she's 100% right. My God, right now, we need a shadow transportation secretary. Why the hell are the planes falling out of the air? Why are you releasing air traffic controllers, farmers. What are we going to do? I'm sitting right here as you are on the Canadian border. My friends in Manitoba are stuck. We're stuck. Um, but where's that narrative? And then it's just some nonsense of Trump's every single day. It's some weird story coming out. It's some crypto grift. She's 100% right. And then you put these voices of people who know this. Get a Colin Peterson in agriculture. Put people out there.
Do you
We,
think John Tester should be Shadow Interior Secretary?
well, I think he might be for something else in there. I would have him. I'm a big John Tester fan, as you know. My daughter voted in Montana because she said it was more important to vote for Tester in Montana than me in Minnesota. So there you go. But look, yeah, I think it makes sense, but it goes back to this thread that's going through. Who are we? How are we defining ourselves? I read the story that all of you read. Apparently, there's some folks paid a bunch of money to consultants or whatever. I don't need a consultant. They should be talking to John Tester about what's happening with the federal lands, what's happening. Look, I'm just this morning came from a briefing on the biggest wildfires we've had in decades in Minnesota. Northern Minnesota's on fire. This happens in Montana all the time. And guess what? I had folks there from the National Weather Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Forest Service, whatever. These are the folks that Elon Musk and Donald Trump are crapping all over, who are up there saving folks who voted for Donald Trump, doing just the opposite. And I think if we don't tell that story, it gets lost in this because look, government's too big. Oh yeah. I mean, it's that same thing. We should cut. Do you want your taxes cut? Yeah, I want my taxes cut. Do you want your taxes cut and then the forest fire to burn your house? No, I don't want the forest fire to burn my house. We're not connecting things together. And if we're not out there making that case, so the senator's right. And yes, John would be a person to talk about this because look, what John knows, and I would argue with folks in the Midwest knows, there's a sweet spot between environmental concerns and economic growth in things like agriculture and sustainable aviation fuel and renewable forest products, things like that, where we don't get ourselves stuck in a place where, of course, we can use the resources of our federal lands, but we're going to manage them for everybody, not for the wealthy few and not to destroy it. So I think it's a great idea. And somebody should implement it because you're right. It is true that we need to be taking guidance from the party, but somebody needs to lead. And those of us who are still in elected office have a responsibility to do that.
So, just kind of continuing down that path, I keep hearing from so many of my friends who have high school, college-aged sons, especially, that this group of young men really gravitated toward Donald Trump this last election. And you can talk about all kinds of reasons for that. But one of them they keep pointing to is this rise in social media influencers like Andrew Tate and some of the misogyny that goes with that. And
Yeah.
then there's another thing that I'm seeing, and this is something that the GOP has been very effective at utilizing, and that is getting out to high schools. Charlie Kirk's group, they are holding events at high schools across Montana, and they are getting high schoolers involved and excited and thinking it's really cool and all these things. Am I wrong? Is there a Democratic group like that?
No, there is not as effective as it should be. If they are, it's organic because that's going to be our savior. This group of Gen Z and Alpha getting involved again. But you're absolutely right. And I say this because I'm proud to say it looks like as of next Tuesday, I'm going to have a high school graduate with my son, Gus. And he's pretty in tune to this. But when he said this, he said, Dad, a lot of these young guys, especially, said that they're not voting on the policy issues. And he wasn't dissing them. He said they may know the policy issues, but most of them don't. They're doing it because there's a sense of excitement, a sense of thrill in this. It's entertainment or whatever. We all dismiss that. Donald Trump's a clown. Donald Trump's rallies are a clown. This MMA fighting stuff and this, and look, you start veering in to the Andrew Tate stuff, which is dangerous misogyny and, assault issues and all of that. But there's a peripheral side of that is not criminal, but is still going down the same road of saying you got a place to belong. And I think this is me just pontificating for what it's worth. social media and other things have disconnected people more than they were. We were more connected in my generation. It was easier to be a kid when I was growing up. And I've always said this as a teacher, if you don't give a kid a place to belong, they'll go find one. So why you want them to be involved in sports and music and things in school, because they will go find a group of folks. And I think Donald Trump understands belonging, understand groups. I mean, you look at it. He gives them a uniform, the red hat. He gives them some chants, some talking points, whatever. It's not that all that different than when we build sports teams in high school. You belong, you're part of this. It's not so much the policies. I think it's incredibly dangerous, but I don't think we went out to get them. We didn't out to make them feel a part of this. We didn't out to make, and what they're doing is, and this is very effective, when it comes down to it, with John, the teacher part you were going to come to, it's Maslow's hierarchy. People will always vote on security. And that's why Trump always goes back to the tough guy, the strength thing and all of this. And it's why woke and weak worked for them or whatever. They portrayed us, and they always attack your masculinity. They always attack whether you know these things, because it's part of a broader strategy of making the Democratic Party look weak. And then it works hand in hand. If they're weak, they're not going to fight for you. So your point is 100% correct. I think what they're doing is dangerous. I think some of the people that they're putting up as role models are horrific and going to cause us massive problems. But from a pure political strategy of it, they're winning on that front. And we've got to have the counters to it with is both engagement, healthy role models. And again, John, I know this is a touchy subject amongst folks. The idea of young people being in more leadership positions versus an aging demographic. I think that's oversimplified at times. I don't really care how old you are as long as you're effective. But I think the narrative that the Democratic Party is gatekeepers and there's no room for young people has also been damaging amongst that group. And it works in Republicans' favor.
I would just to touch on that for a little bit. I had an opportunity to be a fellow at the University of Chicago, and I was able to teach some people in their late teens and early 20s. And I've never been around a smarter group of people in my life. I don't care what age they were. These kids were white hot smart, and the quicker they can get in positions of leadership, the better off we're going to be. I want to take you back. How many years were you a public school teacher for?
Not a little shy of 20.
A little shy of 20 years. And I'm sure you were teaching when the whole thing of teaching to tests came in.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Teaching tests instead of teaching people how to
think
critically and think, period. And this isn't my thought process, by the way. This was pointed out to me yesterday in Denver, Colorado. But I thought it was pretty interesting. I'd love to get your opinion on it, because I think it does impact how young voters think, maybe. And that is that we're teaching kids how to take tests. We're not teaching kids how to think anymore, which I think is stupid. And so we're also teaching kids there's black and white and there's no shades of gray, because when you take a test, there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer, and that's all there is to it. There's nothing. And there are damn few things in life that are black and white, in my opinion. There's shades of gray all over the place. So my question to you is, you're a teacher, you were in the classroom, you were a supporter of public education. I'm a huge supporter of public education. I think it's the foundation of our economy. I think it's the foundation of our democracy. But do you think this could be part of the problem? And the longer we go down this road, and to whoever's listening to this that has control over this, I hope it helps. But we're having teachers to teach the tests instead of having teachers teach kids how to think, it can have a really negative impact. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, absolutely. I look, my graduate work was in experiential education, because I got to the point where here I am, a geography teacher, which is the world and everything in it. And I'm in a classroom with no windows teaching it. Boring as hell. I hated it. I hated listening to myself. And so my idea was get out there, get into the classroom, encourage the thinking, encourage that interaction. I think all of us who are in this know, and then provide the resources to these kids to recognize, I go back to this idea that there's multiple ways to learn, multiple intelligences. Take care of the basics, make sure, like we did in Minnesota, every kid comes to school, free breakfast, free lunch. Now all of a sudden you take that stuff off the table, you can start to think and you can start to learn. And I'm worried, John, very worried. Of course, this movement towards voucherization, movement towards what's basically, they're afraid of indoctrination in public schools. It's just the opposite. They want the money to go to their private school so they can indoctrinate in their way. We've seen it in higher ed. And I think, again, this attack on universities, this attack on intellectualism, I don't want to overthink it, but I also think it works in the favor of having a population that is kept in the dark. It is helpful to folks who want to circumvent free speech, critical thinking, being challenged. My God, today I'm hearing that our scientists are being prohibited from being able to publish their works in independent scientific journals, that Harvard University and others are not going to be able to do anything do research if it doesn't fit the research of this current agenda, this current administration. So yes, I think they understand that the key to all of this, controlling the money is one thing, controlling the votes another, but I think controlling the education system is a big one. And I am really keep talking about this, is how hard it is to be a kid right now. I've got an 18-year-old and a 24-year-old, and they're doing great, and they know that they're in a privileged position, but it is difficult now with college costs, with how do you get into job training, some of the disconnected. And I think this thing where they're playing into young men, once again, I go back to Trump. Trump has correctly identified a problem, a disconnect and a frustration amongst a young cohort of men. And then instead of fixing it the right way, which is more critical thinking, more opportunities in school, they've taken it and weaponized it into, you need to blame somebody else for your problems. I mean, how much time have we spent on transgender folks in sports rather than focusing on a much broader issue of getting students engaged, getting them critical thinking? Because the Republicans are very smart at that. So no, you're not wrong, John. I hated it. I hated the testing on it. I think it drove good people out of the profession. I am do everything I can to encourage talented young people to go into teaching, but you tell me who wants to go into teaching. Very, very difficult right now.
Not only very, very difficult, but for the wages that are getting paid, you can damn near flip. In fact, I think you can flip hamburgers at McDonald's and make more money than a teacher in a classroom right now.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. And then they're disrespected. We didn't go in it to get rich, but we didn't take an oath of poverty. But the one
always
thing
helps to be able to pay the bills, though, if you know what I mean.
Agreed.
Yeah, well, you can. I think local journalists too are right there. I know you can flip
Yes.
and make more money than being a local journalist, and that's a problem too. Okay, so I have kind of a two-part question here. You've both found yourself in this spot, right, in your respective states, where you're called too liberal for the right, you're too centrist for the ultra liberals. Although I know, Governor, you've been under attack a little bit recently for people saying like, "Oh, he went so far left, and now he's back to the center." And I know there's been a lot of chatter about that. But I guess I have two questions here, and this isn't meant to be mean spirited, but you both lost. So, is there room in our political sphere for a Jon Tester or a Tim Walz type of candidate anymore?
John, did you see how she said that? We did both lose. I appreciate that. Yes. Here's what I'll let John say this, is that
This is what I have to deal with all the time, Tim. I have to deal with this all the time. Go ahead, Tim.
and look, I am biased on this because both Jon Tester and Senator Tester are good friends. And if I had to pick who I would want as a senator, I would pick Jon Tester. And I say that because I think he embodies both the decency and the compassion, but pragmatism to get things done. This is, people who sit behind their keyboards or the pundits or whatever, you got to get things done. Like people, you're right, criticizing me because I'm going to have to compromise with Republicans. You know why? Because the voters put them into a tie. So the voters of Minnesota put them into a tie. I don't have to agree with it. I'm certainly not going to agree to something that I think compromises my values, my morals, or constitutional authority. But if I don't necessarily agree with a tax policy, but I need to get it to get funding for my schools, I'm going to compromise. And so I think the country needs folks who are willing to be progressively pragmatic with the best interest of people at heart. If we don't have those and we move to the edges of unable to move out of purity, and look, our party makes it almost impossible to not do that, I think it becomes very difficult to govern. We're seeing it right now in real time. This isn't just a Democratic problem. 10 years ago, there would have been 20 Republican senators in full revolt against the power that's being taken by the executive branch away from Article 1 of the Constitution and the Senate. There certainly, even several years ago, would have been John McCain standing. That is no longer true. And I think they're experiencing the same thing. So I do think you move on a continuum, not to garner votes, but to be able to do what's in the best interest pragmatically at the time to improve people's lives. And it might be 2 steps forward, 1 step back at times, but it's always towards that. So I don't know, John. I think not having, I saw this in the House when Colin Peterson fell away, that was pretty much it. And I think when you and Sherrod went, that was pretty much it.
Well, I want to address Maricha's question. I know you didn't come on to listen to me, but I got to tell you 2 things. Number one, my wife and I will be married for 48 years, comes 3rd of September this year. And she disagrees with me about 35% of the time. Okay. So just because
Married.
Tim Walz, John Tester doesn't do exactly what you want all the time doesn't mean that they're bad people. Okay. That's number one. And my wife, we're not divorced yet. So we should be able to make that 48. The second thing I'll tell you is that when I got elected in 2006, one of the amazing things that happened was right after the election, I got put on a show called Hardball with, what's his name?
Chris Matthews.
Matthews, with Chris Matthews. And during that whole campaign, I was being accused of being a left-wing liberal, just an SOB, okay, just a left-winger. And I got on I just got elected, just announced it at noon. I'm on Hardball at like 2 in the afternoon. Could be wrong on those times, but it's pretty damn close. And Chris Matthews, the first question was, as a moderate senator, how are you going to operate in the United States Senate? And it was like something that was foreign to me because I was called a flaming liberal for the last year. And now Chris Matthews is calling me a moderate senator. So it's what I'm trying to say is this is all in the eye of the beholder. And if Tim Walz or John Tester were obstructionists, we could just say, yeah, if you don't do it my way, you hit the highway. I think we see a lot of that in the executive branch right now.
Yeah.
That's why they don't want to work with Congress. Do it my way or no way. And that's BS. So I don't like that question, Maritza. So go ahead.
I'm so sorry, Senator. I apologize. I want to ask one more for the governor, and then I have a couple listener viewer questions, and then a short game, if that's okay. So, Governor, you have a dog named Scout.
I do.
And you have a cat named Honey. So do you think it's more likely that your pets will live in the governor's mansion for a 3rd term, or would they rather live in something larger, like maybe like in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I was thinking a little house in Montana, maybe, John. I don't know, and go fishing or something. But on that,
I'm wearing a Trout Unlimited hat, so
I see it. I see it. No, we're finishing a legislative session up here. Been a privilege of my lifetime to serve. 12 years in Congress, and then, of course, 8 years as governor. I think there's unfinished work yet in Minnesota. I don't believe that I'm the only person who can do that. What I do say is that I do believe a progressive Democrat needs to win, especially as a counterweight to what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. And so I think we'll assess that. What I've been saying is if anybody's looking past this year's Virginia and New Jersey governor's races or next year's midterm, they're barking up the wrong tree. I think this will shake itself out. What I'm trying to say is, and I think this is happening, and I think your podcast, I would add to this, is that everybody needs to be on the field and everybody needs to be filling the void. And the party needs to learn from that and listen to these and hear what your viewers and listeners are saying. So for me, I think it's a decision of that. I just want to be helpful. I always viewed this as servant leadership. If I can be helpful, I'll be in it. Again, not to win elections, but I think it's to improve lives. And I don't think what we're seeing out of DC is improving lives right now. You're hitting on the rural hospital thing. That's a whole nother show for all of you.
Whole other show, yeah.
But I think your folks listening here need to know this is going to be catastrophic. And look, Minnesota is a very rural state too. We're a big rural state. And it's the rural areas that predominantly voted for Donald Trump that are going to pay the heaviest price. And that's a shame.
And I was just talking about this with somebody. I mean, it's the responsibility of so many people, not just politicians, but local leaders, journalists to really explain these things, because you start talking about Medicaid reimbursement and rural hospitals and I mean, that's complicated.
FMAP expansion, you're right.
It goes over their heads. And so I really, when I had a show on Scripps News, I love to be able to break those complex things down into simplified ways so that people could understand it. Because once they understand it, it just makes such a
You
difference.
could put on a local hospital administrator. These folks really know. They're regular in their community. They're just regular folks. I'll tell you one thing that's hopeful of this is a group of Republican legislators here sent a pretty harsh letter to Donald Trump and to the House and Senate and said, don't make these Medicaid cuts because it will punish our people. So that's who you get on.
Yeah. And one thing people need to understand, if you want to simplify it, these cuts are not just going to hurt the people on Medicaid. They're going to hurt everybody that lives in rural America, because with that hospital, without that Medicaid, they're hanging by their fingernails now. They will close. Those towns will dry up and
Yeah.
blow away.
These are
And
not able-bodied people sitting home and not working, so you have a
absolutely.
work requirement.
Facts.
40% of kids in Minnesota, which we rank first in healthcare and have a very high per capita income, 40% of our kids use Medicaid, over 70% of folks in long-term care and nursing homes in rural areas. And again, as John's saying, that's what pays the bills to keep the hospital open. Even if you're rich enough to go in and pay your bill with cash, your local hospital's not going to be there without Medicaid. So there's nobody to pay.
That's right.
Do
That's exactly
you have
right.
any other questions, Senator, before I move on to
I've got one more, but you've got some listener questions. Ask him a listener question. I got a football coach question for him here. In a
Okay.
minute,
And then we have to play a tiny little game. Okay. One of our viewers wants to know if Democrats will take accountability for not listening to people over, specifically this person wanted to know about President Biden's age. And they say that they feel like acknowledgement is needed to move on. And I also have heard a lot of trust has been lost with Democrats. And I know, Governor, you're saying that you take responsibility for your
I do.
part in this, but I'm wondering if you think there needs to be a bigger, I think this person is asking a bigger piece of accountability from the party as a whole.
Yeah, and I think this one, John would know this. This one's pretty complex because you have somebody who gave their entire life to this. You have a personal health issue, which is always, a little tricky to ascertain. I think a situation that we ended up in with basically a 90-day campaign that people felt like they were a little bit, that there should have been a primary or whatever should have happened. I think all of those things are fair. I think the biggest piece of the accountability is someone asked, would you have done anything different in this campaign? Yeah, we would have won. So I think you start with that. There has to be something didn't go right. But I got chastised pretty heavily. Like, how dare you criticize, this or whatever? It was you. You didn't do your job. I know that. But what I'm saying is I don't think that was it in its entirety. So I think being honest to folks, listening to what they're saying, listening to them to believe. But I would also tell people this. This was about people staying home. And if those people who stayed home would have just come out, we would have won across the board. And so I think that piece is both the trust, and it goes back to what I started with earlier. Give them a reason to be excited about you to come out and vote. I think those things are separate from this individual circumstance of whether Joe Biden should have left a year or two ago. I can't speak to that because I'm not privy enough to it. I do acknowledge that the frustration around that. I think we can acknowledge it's not good to run a 90-day campaign if the other side's not doing it that way.
Okay, this is a really easy listener question. What's your favorite restaurant in Bozeman when you visit your daughter, Hope?
Oh my God.
Oh, maybe this is a hard one.
Look, you got the best breakfast spots. I like the Nova breakfast. I like the old, what is the little restaurant right on the corner, the Western one for breakfast?
Oh.
The line's always too big. So
Jam, right? Is that Jam?
No,
No.
it's like the bunkhouse or so. I'm sorry for the name of it. No, I'm gonna go with Nova.
Okay, Senator, go ahead.
Well, mine's open range, but it's not for breakfast. That's for
That's
steak.
it. That's the one. How do you probably have your own table though. I can't get in and I'm standing outside.
No. It's just, I don't have my own table, but you got to show up. I mean, that's part of politics.
Here's the deal. Next time you come to Bozeman, we'll meet you down there. John Tester will get us the table.
His office was 1 block away. His office was 1 block away from that.
That's exactly correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe 2, but it's good enough. Yeah. So yeah, were you a head coach of football, or did you coach defense,
Defensive
offense?
coordinator.
Defensive coordinator.
Yeah,
This is perfect. This is
I
perfect.
know.
I've got a grandson that's graduating from high school this year,
Yeah.
and he's going to a place called MSUN, otherwise known as MSU Northern, and he's going to play some football. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, it's an NIA school. It's about 50 miles from the farm. It's a great school, and he's going to take up diesel
good for
tech. It's
him.
great.
That's
Great.
the best type of football.
I am tickled pink for the kid. My granddaughter graduates from college next year. She's going to be an RN. And I'm tickled pink for her. But I've got a football coach on my podcast. My grandson plays middle linebacker. He's
Oh,
built like a tank and he's got good speed. What's your recommendation to him when he goes to college to play football? What would you say to that kid if he was your kid leaving your program and going to go to school and play football?
all right. You know, I got to do this both as a parent. Focus on the education they're giving you. Get that done. Um, and then live in the moment every day. I say this about football is a sport. It's not a lifetime sport. And the joy, those of us who love football knows how big of a deal it is. I think just recognize every moment you get to put those pads on and play. It is a true joy. So enjoy it. Middle linebacker, that's it, man. That is the spot. That was us linebacker specialty. That was my coaching spot.
Well, I think the kid's got a good skill set, and I think he's going to do well. And if he's playing, I'm going to bring you to Montana, and we're going to go up and see a football game, and then
How
I'm going
big
to
is
buy
he?
you.
How
Then I'm
big?
going to buy you a steak. He's 5'10". He weighs 220. He's got a neck as big around as my thighs, my waist, and
Yeah.
and I asked him what he ran because his dad told me he runs a 4.5 40. Now his dad might be full of shit. I don't know because how son-in-laws
Yeah.
are, but he's pretty fast.
He's
He's
got
pretty
to be.
fast.
I always said this. I'm concerned about their 10-yard speed. That's where
Yeah.
they play. If he's probably
Well, I can tell you in college, his junior year, they were there for a game, and I watched him run a wide receiver down from the middle line linebacker position.
you're going
So
to have a lot of fun watching games this year. So,
he's got some wheels. Yeah, yeah. I think
Okay,
it's going to be.
all
I
right.
know that the governor has to go, but I want to end this on another little fun note. I really would love to just talk about Minnesota, St. Louis Park, Leon Chin, the Vikings, you name it. I thought about maybe like testing.
Frost, the Professional Women's Hockey League.
That's
We just won
right.
the championship 2 years in a row. I was able to go to that.
Oh,
Incredible.
yeah. I mean, we could have a love fest about Minnesota. And I thought about, testing how much John Tester knows about Minnesota. But I decided that both of our states neighbor Canada. And you have both said that Canada is your best friend. And so
Yes.
I want to test this out. So I'm wondering, will you guys play a little game called Battle for Bestie?
All right, let's try this.
Okay, so just blurt out blurt out the answer. Okay, ready? Quebec is the world's top producer of this condiment.
Boy, I don't
Ketchup.
mustard.
Maple syrup.
Oh Christ.
Jesus. Oh my God.
Okay,
What?
okay. What are the three essential ingredients in poutine?
We got gravy in that. Mashed potatoes. You got that? A starch, the
Yes.
gravy,
And
and then you got to have a meat product, whatever that is, right?
come on, this is a good Minnesota product. They might say it's a Wisconsin product, but I'm gonna say
With the
Minnesota.
cheese in it?
Cheese curds.
In poutine, really?
Yeah,
This,
yeah.
this is really
Standard
unfair.
Canadian?
Montana, I don't even know how to spell poutine. Okay.
I've had it at the state fair, but I don't eat it on a regular basis.
Well, it's probably
So-
healthier for you not to. Okay, my last
Yeah.
question.
We have corn on the cob at our state fair. Okay, we don't have poutine. Okay,
Oh, Tester, we should go to the Minnesota State Fair this year. I'm
Yeah.
going. Let's do
go
it.
see that buttered
everybody
cow or
has
something.
to. Everybody kisses Iowa's butt on the state fair. Ours is much better.
Way better. Okay, last question. What year did Canada become the 51st state?
Yeah, never, never,
It
never,
doesn't.
never.
I thought you were going to ask us something that was important, like, can you sing the national anthem?
Oh, can you do that?
Oh, Canada,
Canada, he knows it.
glorious and free. Yeah, I can.
This is great.
That's the thing that people forget about John Tester. He is musically talented, like seriously musically talented.
For the deaf, I'm very talented musically. If you can't hear, I'm there, man.
Hey, I'm
I
gonna
have a
come up.
video.
I think here's my scoop of the day. I think my son may end up moving to Montana too. You know, my
Really?
daughter's an MSU grad. We love MSU up there.
Yeah.
I'm an MSU, but that's Minnesota State Mankato.
Mhm.
She's
Yeah.
at Montana State.
So is he going to go to Montana State and Bozeman too?
He's thinking about it. I think he's trying to get him up there to work, and I just can't find any housing. My God, you got to be a millionaire in Bozeman. What's up with that?
That's true. That's
That's
true.
absolutely true. Their housing is about as expensive as it is in San Francisco, and you know that if your daughter lived there, that's for sure. But
Well,
you
Governor,
can always go. You can always send him to a little place called Montana State University Northern. This is a place that I wore a hat that had MSUN on it, and Maritza said, "What are you doing wearing an M-Sun hat?" Okay. So
well, okay, let me just make a quick pitch. I live in Missoula, and I am a graduate of the University of Montana, which is an excellent school. So we would welcome him here. I could be like his,
They
proxy.
have a football team, don't they?
Oh, yeah, they have a big old football team. Yes, they do. Governor Tim Walz, I know we're out of time. We've stretched this out as long as we can. I so appreciate you being with us.
Well, it's
I just
both of you.
want to say one thing. Tim Walz is a guy that you'd like to go out and have a beer with. So we need to get you to Montana so we can go have a beer, Tim. Okay.
Yeah,
All
Bullock's got a brewery up there. He keeps telling me we'll come up and visit Bullock's brewery there.
That's right. Brothers Tap House.
Yeah, in Helena. That's right.
Helena, we'll meet you there.
If we play our cards right, we might even get Bullock to buy. That'd be great.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
You bet. Thanks, Tim.
See you soon.
Yep.
Okay, so we are going to do something new this week. We are going to debrief over on Substack, kind of do a post-game analysis of this. But before we do that, tell me about your hat. It's Trout Unlimited? Is that what you said?
It's to use Trout Unlimited. I figure it's time to go fishing. So
I cannot believe that you didn't pull out a Minnesota hat, like a Minnesota Vikings hat that I just put on.
I got to tell you, Minnesota played in the Super Bowl like every year that I was in high school and won once. And so,
listen, they've never won.
I kind of give up on them. I have. I give up on.
I'm a devoted fan. I'm a devoted fan, and I know what heartbreak is like.
My best friend in high school was a big Minnesota fan, so I got to listen to how the Purple People Eaters and all those folks were doing, and
oh yeah, Oh yeah.
They've got a good team now, or at least they did last season. We'll see.
We are going to debrief on this conversation on our Substack. Go check it out. You can also find us on Blue Sky, Instagram, and YouTube. You can shoot us an email at groundedpcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much to our guest, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, to Pearl Jam for letting us use their music, and to all of you, our listeners. Thanks for being with us.
Tally ho.